Hey guys, how's it going? And happy Friday. I hope all of you are doing good. I was just sitting here drinking some coffee, getting ready for the stream tonight, and looking at the chat. I see a lot of good people, as I do every single week. So, shout out to all of you guys that are out there because you guys are the reason why I keep doing these live streams. And I posted a stream last week talking about how there's a dire threat in the United States of America. And we talked about that sheriff in Butler County, Ohio, Sheriff Mike Murphy from Livingston County, Michigan. And you can't even make this stuff up. Like, I wish I could make this stuff up, but first of all, I'm not a particularly good actor and I don't write scripts for these live streams. This is just me sitting here in my shop talking to all of you guys. And now, a week later, cyber attack took out much of the cellular phone network, a bunch of websites yesterday, pharmacies. We were literally just talking last week how being prepared. Are you prepared? Are you ready for the threats and attacks on your country, in your state, in your county, in your hometown? Because there were people struggling to get their medicine on time yesterday because the networks that the pharmacies use went down. Now, you can read different reports, and kind of the more you read, the more confused you get, because if you're a smart person, you're not going to believe what the mainstream media tells you. But it appears, and probably is, in my opinion, major cyber attacks that have been going on for a long time against the United States are still going on today. And if I had to opine just for a second here, I would say you ain't seen nothing yet. They're starting to attack as the United States just sits there, plays defense, plays defense, plays defense, keeps increasing your taxes, making it harder and harder for you to be able to feed yourself. Prices of ammunition going up, making it harder and harder for you to be able to defend yourself. Meanwhile, dumping almost endless money into the Ukraine, into the Middle East. You know, it's called the military industrial complex. And Dwight D. Eisenhower, General Dwight D. Eisenhower, then President Eisenhower, in his farewell address, his last chat to the American people before he left his presidency, he warned about the military industrial complex. And it seems there's no end to the funding overseas, but there's nothing going on right now to try to protect our homeland and to protect our borders. In fact, it's even worse than that. They're literally encouraging and now bribing criminals to invade the United States of America. I don't know if you saw the breaking news throughout this week, but as New York, with all their draconian gun restrictions on the Second Amendment, which literally says shall not be infringed, they're now offering allegedly $10,000 debit cards to foreign invaders, to criminals that are literally breaking laws, that are felonies if you break those laws in the United States. And you're sitting here right now thinking to yourself, what country do I live in? Well, I'm not sure right now, but I know there's still a lot of good people that live here. And I still think we have a chance, or I wouldn't be on here. But we have some major issues going on in this country, and we're going to talk about those tonight. But wait, there's more. There's literally another, probably, allegedly, Chinese air balloon floating across the United States as we speak. And you think to yourself, hold on a minute. Dude, you're rehashing like months ago's news. No, literally today, tonight, right now, there's another balloon that's free to gather all of the intelligence it wants, do whatever the heck it wants. And we were literally sitting here. I was sitting in the same seat. Maybe you're where you are right now, or maybe you were somewhere else. And we were talking about drones coming in, unmanned aircraft coming in, patrolling the United States, maybe your neighborhood, your hometown, your county, maybe right above your house, maybe right outside of your window. And I had one person, he's probably in the chat right now, probably changing his mind, I think. But I think there was one person last week that said, 2AE to you, you're paranoid. There ain't nobody coming in this country to do us harm. They're sending us only their best, and everything's good there. And there ain't nothing in the sky. Are you kidding me? And then I'm getting ready for the stream tonight, and I'm thinking about stuff I want to talk about. I'm like, wait, what's this? There's another balloon, unidentified balloon, just kind of moseying along, drifting across the United States like, you know what I mean? So we need to think about this stuff, and we need to talk about this stuff, because these are the times in a country like this, with people that are around like this, that we need the Second Amendment the absolute most. And in many places, the Second Amendment is under attack like it's never, ever, ever been before. Is that a coincidence? Or is it by design? You tell me in the chat, because I read all of the chat from last week, and you guys are very, very smart people. But we need to be encouraged, and we need to be together. So that's why we're doing this stream tonight. Before we get into the stuff I want to talk about, I just want to thank all of you for the many ways you guys support this channel. All of you that are on Patreon, those of you who leave generous super chats here on YouTube, the channel members, people that support on Locals. Locals is another site. The link's down there in the description. It's censorship free, where I provide bonus live streams, Saturday nights, extra content, things that I'm just not going to be able to post here on YouTube. So make sure you check that out, because we need to be diversified. Because I talk about as much as I possibly can here on YouTube, but I definitely can't talk about everything I would like to here on YouTube. So make sure you guys are diversified, following your favorite channels, including this one, over on other places, and I'm posting tons of extra content over on Locals. Also, when I'm thinking about ammunition here, do you guys have enough ammo? How much is enough? Can you ever have enough ammo? I was sitting there looking at some of this RPM. This is Rockville Precision Munitions. For more information on them, go over to my Locals community. And this is currently the top post there. I usually pin my previous live streams, but right below those, you'll see more information about Rockville. This is a small ammo shop, Middle Tennessee. And this is 357 Magnum. Somebody had said, well, it's like, what if there was? What if there was something trying to fly in your house and harm you and your family? What if crap did hit the fan? Somebody said 357 Magnum, and I thought about that real quick, and I don't know, just wanted to show this to you guys tonight, and shout out to all the revolver people and lever action. And yes, guys, it is illegal to shoot down any aircraft, including unmanned aircraft, but last week, and maybe this week, we're going to talk about scenarios where if crap were to hit the fan, if we were without rule of law, and there was unmanned aircraft that was spying on you or attacking you, or even worse. So yesterday, it hit much of the country. The fake news is going to tell you that it was just AT&T. AT&T, some of their cell towers went down. No, it was actually a lot worse than that. Many people were completely severed from communication. People trying to get a hold of their spouses and loved ones and saying, where are you at? Is everything okay? And they weren't answering. Just think about that. We live in the year 2024, where we have TikTok. We have Facebook. We have YouTube. We have all these myriad of games that we can sit there and entertain ourselves with. And basically, people are connected to these things. You know, we call them cell phones, and they call it a cell phone, but really it's a GPS tracking device. It's a spy cam. It's a spy microphone. Just think about that. There was a time. Just think about this for 2 seconds, because I don't think a lot of people do. There was a time where they used to have stories written about the KGB infiltrated this person's house, and there they planted bugs. And they would listen to them and spy on them. And then maybe they would leave their house, and they would have what's called a tail. A car would follow them around to see where they're at. And that's like literally the plot line of like really, really creepy novels and dystopian scenarios of somebody that's spying on you and following you around. And now we don't need to have the KGB. You know, when I was younger, was during the Cold War, right? You don't need the KGB to come after you. Not when your own government has the CIA, but I'm not even talking about that. I'm talking about, we literally carry around something constantly. Virtually everybody does. That's spying on your every move, all of your conversations, watching you, listening to you, tracking you, compiling databases. In fact, they say that big tech and the government, big tech, the government, I kind of just repeated myself. We talk about oligarchies. Look up oligarchy. And I think it's very synonymous with what's getting installed here in the United States. But you go around and it's literally getting to the point where they say that they, the government, the big tech, knows more about you than you do yourself. They literally have predictive programming and algorithms, and they often know when a woman is pregnant before she actually does. No, I'm serious. Go look it up. There's been studies on this. There was a story one time when a woman wrote about where she had started getting like stuff for babies and coupons and stuff since she's coming. And she's like, why would I be getting that? A week later, 2 pink lines on the test, and boom, she was pregnant. They literally knew she was pregnant before she did. Wow. They literally know every single thing you're doing. And the phone is considered your lifeline for so many reasons. It's not just the GPS tracking device that monitors your every move, but like I said, it's your entertainment. It's how you get information. See, not many people actually go out and talk to each other anymore. I've been realizing, why would they need to when they have the internet and they can just type, they can text, they can search, and they can call. But when you need to get a hold of somebody and all of a sudden you can't, and your phone's just sitting there with no bars of service, none, what are you going to do? Are you going to go start ranting and raving over on Twitter? No, you can't, because your internet's down. You call your wife, you hope she's okay, but she's not picking up the phone. This literally happened to millions of people just yesterday in the United States. Now, I did hear some stories from people I actually know in real life how they were trying to get a hold of loved ones just because they didn't know at the time it was a mass outage. They're just like, why aren't they picking up their phone? I need to get a hold of them. But a lot of what I was hearing people do is they were complaining and saying they couldn't play their game. They couldn't get in there to talk smack on the internet. And that's where we are right now. Now, things have changed as far as communication goes, and the First Amendment is under attack. Under attack like it's never, ever been under attack before. And the internet is protected speech, obviously. It's a public utility until it's not. Until you have Google, who's the #1 search engine in the whole world, and YouTube, which is owned by Alphabet, the same sister company, they're one of the same, is the second largest search engine. Did you guys know that? Google's the #1 search engine and YouTube's the #2 search engine in the United States, and I believe in the whole world. And they don't let you talk about everything that you want to talk about. There's so much I'd like to say and you'd like to say, but if you chat it in the chat, you wouldn't be able to. If I talk about it, they could go poof, just like that. It makes me think about the Second Amendment, which is also under attack. If you remember, just a couple weeks ago, I was on this channel Friday night talking about in Hawaii, which is supposed to be a state within the United States of America, they don't follow the Second Amendment. They don't believe the right to keep and bear arms and that it shall not be infringed. They don't believe that's the law that they have to follow. They follow the spirit of aloha. This is literally in the United States. The spirit of aloha is considered their supreme law of the land, and it trumps the United States Constitution. And this is still a state in our union? How? Literally think about that. I know that was 3 weeks ago stream, but some of you guys are new here. We literally have a state in this country that says our supreme law is the spirit of aloha. And they go back to quote former queens and kings and different things that they wrote. And that's the law that they're going to follow. Wow. We have a huge Supreme Court case coming up pertaining to the Second Amendment. This is the bump stock case. We're talking about Michael Cargill out of Texas. This bump stock case is literally huge. Probably, in my opinion, even bigger than Bruin. You could argue they might be close to each other, but what happened? A quick history lesson for all of you guys. there used to be an item called a bump stock. And it was a piece of plastic that you would affix to a firearm, typically a rifle. A couple different formats were made. There were different brands, different styles, but I'll just collectively call them all bump stocks just for argument's sake. And what it did is it allowed the firearm to bump fire, which is not full automatic fire. It did not make it a machine gun. It never did. The inventors of these various products knew that. The ATF knew that. The ATF under the Barack Hussein Obama administration. You guys sometimes hear me talk about the current former vice president. Yeah, I'm talking about when he was the actual vice president. The ATF said not one time, not two times, but at least 3 separate times over about a 10-year period that these bump stocks they're semi-automatic. It's called bump firing. It's not a machine gun. It does not meet the definition. It's just not that. Well, Obama went after the Second Amendment. Definitely very anti-gun. But a weird thing always happens. See, when the Democrats are in power, this is in Washington, D.C. We'll talk about what the Democrats do in power in Michigan in just a few minutes. But when Democrats are in power, you'll see all the Republicans, they'll resist. And they'll fight back because it's the other side. And it's this constant gang warfare strategy of it's blue and it's versus red. And the Republicans are red and the Democrats are blue. And when blue walks into the wrong side of town that's patrolled by red, they fight, right? It's literally no different than how a lot of the street gangs have operated in the United States and throughout the world. So they wear their colors. They go in there and one color has to fight the other color. And then in the end, they usually have rhinos that are part of this gang of 8 and with the Democrats, and they go in and they still send endless money to Ukraine and do nothing to protect our borders. Washington, D.C. is a very, very corrupt town. Well, under the Democrats, Obama wanted to pass a lot of gun control, actually. And there were threats. If you remember events like Sandy Hook and different things that were exploited by the leftists, where they love to dance on the graves of children and use that to pass their communist agenda, their anti-American agenda. And they always do that. And they've always done that. But they use tragedies, and then they try to take away your guns every single time. Well, let's fast forward a little bit to a Republican administration. His name was Donald J. Trump, 45th president of the United States. And there was a tragedy that happened in Las Vegas, where the perpetrator allegedly, and I say allegedly because there's never been any fact-finding available to the United States public. A lot of evidence was suppressed, so I'm going to say allegedly, according to some people, there were bump stocks used. And Trump said, I don't like bump stocks. Get them gone. And well, they said, sir, with all due respect, we can't do that because the law says, the National Firearms Act, which is completely and utterly unconstitutional. So to be following that law is also going against your oath. But as I like to say, I don't like saying this. I just have to say to put it into perspective. But here we are. So under the rule of the National Firearms Act, which doesn't give a crap about the Constitution, it's like, sir, this is not a machine gun. We can't ban it. And he said, no, get it gone. I don't care. But, sir, we'd have to do an end around to everything. Like the ATF isn't supposed to be making these drastic of rules. And he went to his attorney general. Acting attorney general at that time was Matt Whitaker. Now, I know he's like a really popular conservative pundit now and all this. And there's a lot of things that are really, really popular right now. But, look, he said, get it gone. I want bump stocks gone. I don't care what you have to do. And they did. But they didn't do it in the fashion of, well, we can see something here. No, they had to go way out of even the normal customary tyranny of the ATF. And they had to use this whole Chevron deference. And they had to say, look, even though the law says something completely different, we can literally make new law under an interpretation of the law, and our interpretation will now hold more full force and effect of law than the actual law says. So just think about that for a minute. So if there was a law that says the sky's typically blue, and I said, well, no, actually the sky is typically, I don't know, red. Okay, so what do we do? Well, the sky is red because my interpretation of a law that says the sky is blue has more weight and value than the actual law that says the sky is blue. So now the new rule, but has full force and effective law, is the sky is red. But in this case, it wasn't just an argument about colors. It was if you even own or possess one of these bump stocks, you're a felon instantly. Now you could remove it from the firearm and it would literally just be a piece of plastic. Like literally. Couldn't do anything with it at all if you were just using it as a paperweight or turned it into a bird feeder or just had it as a decoration on your wall. Even just a piece of plastic in and of itself, they deemed to be a machine gun. Now, these were huge leaps. See, people talk about there were certain times in this country, and there were. 1934, the first major federal gun control legislation went through, called the National Firearms Act. It fundamentally paved the way for the other side to be able to destroy America, because for the first time, they had this massive, comprehensive gun control scheme. We could talk about the Gun Control Act of 1968. Monumental. This established so much tyranny that you have to live under today that violates the Second Amendment, obviously. We even had a law come across in 1986. Now, this was called the Firearms Owners Protection Act. Under Ronald Reagan, a Republican. Some people say the greatest Republican ever. Closed the mental hospitals, and we see what dire straits mental health is in this country right now. Open the borders, and we see what's happening right now. When he was governor, he was spearheading and helped make the nationwide movement of no-fault divorce, which we see where our country's at with that right now. But they did something else. They passed the Firearms Owners Protection Act. And there are some things in there that, I hate to say this, but I guess I'll say in air quotes, strengthened the Second Amendment. Second Amendment needs no strengthening at all. The Second Amendment, a well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's the only law we need related to any type of arms, including firearms and many others. Well, instead of repealing the Gun Control Act of 1968, or instead of repealing the National Firearms Act of 1934, they added another set of laws on top of that, collectively called the Firearms Owners Protection Act, which had several provisions. Some of them did help people able to travel with their firearm from state to state, and other provisions. But even that was passed with what was called a poison pill amendment that outlawed machine guns, that said unless they were registered before the effective date of May 1986, that no new machine guns could be added to the registry. And that's where we find ourselves in a situation right now where virtually nobody can own a machine gun. While they're still technically legal, if you have one that's grandfathered in, you have to, first of all, pay a tax to exercise your natural God-given right. These are rights that are endowed by your creator, not the government, not the founding fathers, not Ronald Reagan, not Donald Trump, not Barack Obama, but by your creator. And don't ever forget that. But you can pay the tax, you can do the fingerprints, you can go through the arduous background check process, and you can put that machine gun on a registry and have it registered with the federal government. But that's only if you're very wealthy, or it's a high priority that you put into your collection of machine guns, because they're extremely expensive. So the Firearms Owners Protection Act, with some good over here, ended up being one of these monumental gun control laws. Is anyone just shaking their head right now? I literally can't be the only one. Wait a minute. One of the biggest victories for the Second Amendment we ever had actually became one of our biggest gun control laws? And it was by what many people will say the greatest Republican president of all time, that talked about America being a shining city on a hill. Yeah, actually, that's literally 100% true. Well, I would put Trump's bump stock ban. A president that when he ran, he said, if you elect me, your 8-year attack on the Second Amendment will be over. When I saw him speak in Waterford, Michigan last week, he said, if you elect me again, I will protect your Second Amendment. Nobody came after your Second Amendment when I was in office. That's what he's saying to people right now. But he did come after our Second Amendment. And he actually did more damage to the Second Amendment, I would argue, in many ways. And I didn't forget Bill Clinton. I'm going to circle back to that. Than probably any president had since Ronald Reagan. By doing that bump stock ban. And I know there's probably somebody out there being like, wait a minute, dude. Like, the bump that you might have thought the bump stock was stupid, or you didn't have one, or it weighs too much ammo, or whatever. First of all, I thought it was very nice, and I really, really liked it. But that's my opinion. You can have yours on that. But that has nothing to do with the bump stock. This bump stock ban that Trump put through literally has 0.0001% through about the bump stock. But what it really did is it fundamentally changed the way the ATF would now be allowed to operate. The way the ATF could start coming after certain types of triggers, frames and receivers. And now we see pistol braces where tens and tens and tens of millions of people are still potentially future felons of America. That's another case that's going all the way up to the Supreme Court. And right now, there is a nationwide injunction, no legal advice in the United States, but that rule is not off the table. That rule has not been erased. There's just a stay on it, meaning it can't be enforced. But here's the kicker. I know people, and I had somebody reach out to me from the state of Florida where they still confiscated his brace pistol and ended up destroying the brace, and they were going to destroy the whole gun, but he finally got the gun itself back with the brace destroyed. And this is under a Florida state attorney general that had come out outspoken saying that they weren't going to enforce the pistol brace ban. So there's still people getting their pistol brace weapons confiscated as of very recently. And I've actually seen the documents that proves that. Now, we did have an assault weapons ban. 1994, that lasted 10 years. They put a sunset provision in and said, we'll try it for 10 years, and then it will have to be reauthorized. Well, at that time, Second Amendment supporters voted more. And the votes were, how do I word this very carefully? The votes were more trusted then. And the votes were counted differently back then than many people believe they are today. So back then, there was this huge retaliation at the polls where they had passed this epic assault weapons ban. During the time of that, people got pissed off. People got so pissed off, the Second Amendment was on the ballot, and the Republicans completely flipped everything around. Flipped the House, flipped the Senate, flipped the presidency to, George W., who put in the Unpatriot Act, which makes it where they can spy on you without warrants and violates your privacy and violates your security on monumental levels. I think you guys see where I'm heading with this. There's no good guys here, at least not in Washington, D.C. So, but there was a time when gun owners would actually talk the talk, walk the walk, and stuff got pretty heated and everything flipped around, and Democrats didn't even want to talk about gun control for actually quite some time. They were like literally scared to talk about it because they had all just lost their elections, lost their majorities, and there was a sweeping change in the United States. And everything seemed like it'd be good for a while. Republican came in office. George W. actually loosened some restrictions on a few things, minor things. First of all, besides the assault weapons ban, that was a huge thing when that did not get passed again. But even besides that, he opened it up where you could carry under certain circumstances in national parks and things like that, while passing the Patriot Act, which is one of the biggest intrusions upon your life that the country had ever seen. Obama came in. Like I said, it wasn't for trying, but Obama actually had probably less of an effect against the Second Amendment than Trump did. So here's what we have right now. We have this where there's been different. The Sixth Circuit was completely split on bump stocks. We had a circuit over here saying they are machine guns. Another circuit over there saying they're not machine guns. We've actually had this split 3 or 4 different ways throughout the U.S. Circuit Court of Appeal system. And just this week, like literally coming up in just a few days, the Supreme Court of the United States is going to hear the arguments, the oral arguments about the bump stock. This is something for you guys to really, really pay attention to, because depending what side SCOTUS rules on, and also the way they word their opinion, we're either going to lose like we've never lost before, and the ATF will literally be able to just blink and make this pen an NFA item, or it's going to rein them in and get rid of the pistol brace rules, the frames and receivers rules, different types of triggers, wide open, rare breed, all these different things. They're called solvent traps as another item. All of this stuff has been completely arbitrarily and capriciously just boom. We're going to take this object here that doesn't do this. We're going to say it does, and screw you, because we're the ATF and we do whatever the heck we want. In fact, I've talked recently on here how they got in front of a court just like a couple weeks ago saying, no, when we do this, since it has to do with taxes, you're not even allowed to sue us. Just think about that. A rule. And I know where you guys are coming from when you say, good thing these aren't laws and they're only rules and they don't mean anything. Well, except for when they actually do. And people with guns come and kick in your door. And then when you go try to appeal, or you try to have a fair trial, they say you can't bring up the Second Amendment in court. You can't bring up the First Amendment in court. Do you remember the CRS firearms? The auto key card case? Justin Irving and Matthew Hoover? Nope, can't cite anything in the Bill of Rights for your defense at all. It's like, wait a minute. We're in the United States of America, and we're not even allowed to talk about a First Amendment protected right? Yeah, that's where we find ourselves in the modern day court system. Think about that. And we find ourselves where the ATF is asserting, this was in a federal court, okay, asserting, this wasn't them just on Twitter talking smack, in an actual federal courtroom in front of a federal panel of judges saying, you can't even bring this suit to us. Our rule is so bona fide and our rule is so omnipresent, it's not even allowed to be challenged in court. Wow. I just saw something out of the corner of my eye in the chat. Lonnie says, we the people. I'm going to grab a couple of these super chats in just 1 minute. It says, we the people do not give unelected people to make laws. I assume you mean the power to make laws. Do we or don't we? I know I don't. I'm sure you don't. Let me know if there's anyone in this chat who wants this. And I'm sure I already know the answer. Nobody. But when you think about we the people, unfortunately, we the people isn't people just like me, just like you. I would actually argue, unfortunately. Well, I believe you, good sir, and anyone in this chat, really. I mean, look at all the good people in here. I would argue, actually, we the people have, very unfortunately, given the consent for unelected people to make rules that have full force and effective law because, well, quite frankly, nobody's done anything about it. Here in the state of Michigan, and you guys can think about your home state and the different, how good you have it in your state when it comes to the Second Amendment, how bad you have it. But I will tell you guys this. Every American should be concerned that there would even be one state in your country that is not abiding by the Second Amendment, because you guys know what a house of cards is, right? You build a house of cards and it might look great, but you just move one card out of there and the whole thing can fall over. You just blow it. You look at it funny. The whole thing can completely collapse. And while I want everybody to be rooting for the home team and have pride in your state, and if you guys want to say how your state's better than another state all day long, that's fine. I get it. Home field advantage, home territory. People are very tribal beings. I get all of that. But no matter how Second Amendment supporting your state is you live in, or no matter how much they tyrannically tread on the Second Amendment, we need to all get together and be on this together throughout all 50 states. Because too much what happens is this, and I'm noticing it more and more. We have people on the other side. They'll get together everywhere. Trust me. There's Moms Demand Action and all of these radical anti-gun groups, anti-Second Amendment groups in all 50 states of America. And they actually have turnouts, big turnouts and rallies in all 50 states in the United States. They're there. They're literally everywhere. Then it comes to, I'll just say our side, because we're all very different people. I'm not lumping you guys in generally with me, because I know there's many things we probably don't agree on. But when it comes to the Second Amendment, that's what I mean by our people who believe in freedom, who believe that these are our natural rights. A lot of people just sit back and say, well, hold on a minute. You're stupid if you live in New York. You need to move to Oklahoma. I'm just making this up because I read lots of chats and lots of comments. Or you're in California, screw you. Hope it breaks off in the ocean, which that's a novel concept, but you know what I'm saying. Breaks off in the ocean. You need to move to Tennessee. And the other side's literally sitting there saying we will go to every town. We will go to every state capital, and we will try to get this agenda pushed through no matter what. And while collectively, we the people all have the First Amendment protected right to assemble, to petition our government for a redress of grievance. I'm seeing the other side partaking in that and exercising that right not twice as much, not 5 times as much, not even 10 times as much, but probably 100 or even 1,000 fold than our side is. And I know the reasons why, and I understand there's brick and mortar and logistical reasons why, but it's kind of an interesting concept if you really think about it. We the people don't consent. No, I don't consent, and I know you don't consent, but I've been to the Michigan Capitol and share in the chat the stories you guys have at your state capital or in your hometown. Because it's not that I only care about Michigan. I care about all of your states. It's just I live here. I can drive to my state capital. Maybe there's 1 or 2 other state capitals I could drive to in a day, but that's about it, right? Maybe I could get down to Columbus, Ohio, and get back home that night. But for the most part, obviously, I'm not a wealthy man. I can't afford to go to everybody's state capital every day. So, but here's what I've noticed in my state capital. I noticed about a year ago, like I said, never let a good tragedy go to waste. Tragedy happens at Michigan State University, just literally about a year ago exactly. And the other side's showing up. Seemed like within minutes there was hundreds of them. Within hours there were thousands of them. I might not have been the only one there. I hope I wasn't. But there were so few 2A supporters there, I couldn't find any on those first couple days. And they took over the Capitol grounds by storm. They were circling the rotunda. It's a round, circular designed building where you can keep going up and keep looking down through the middle, all the way to the bottom, glass floor. I literally watched them come in, and the Democrats had taken an exactly 2-seat majority in the House and a 2-seat majority in the Senate, having the governorship as well. They literally came in. You'd see buses pull up, big buses, probably the same buses they're now using to bring invaders in and spread them throughout the interior. Probably literally the same exact buses, in my opinion, if I had to guess. And they just swarmed. It just looked like a swarm, just like woof. That's going on right now, and that's real. And I'll tell you how real it is. They passed 4 major gun control packages, which technically included dozens of sub-bills. These are now in full force and effect in Michigan and have been for about 10 days now. And there's so much more than what people thought that these laws would do. Now, on their face, they're clearly unconstitutional, telling you ways you have to store your firearms, telling you how you have to tend to your lawfully owned property within your home. The government of the state of Michigan is now in your home, dictating the way you have to store lawfully owned property. They no longer allow you to make decisions on how to protect your family. The man of your house is now Gretchen Whitmer, who signed these tyrannical bills into law. Think about that for a minute. She thinks she's the man of your house, telling you how you have to raise your family and how you have to store your lawfully owned property. And then we find out, but wait, there's more. It's not just that. Oh, there's always more. Trust me. These people are never, ever, ever going to stop unless somebody makes them stop or until they take every last gun. And your revolver ain't safe and your pump action shotgun ain't safe. Neither is your single shot break action shotgun, and neither are your BB guns, actually, because there's still a bill on the table to ban those from children. But then we find out that when you go to the gun shop, there's going to be a new big stack of paperwork that you have to not only take and read, and you have to sign to acknowledge that you've received it. That's the video I just put out yesterday with the local gun shop owner, McKenzie, and my favorite state representative, Jamie Thompson. So make sure you check that out if you haven't yet. This is more paperwork and bureaucracy. And now we're bringing in the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services. It's called MDHHS. This should bother everybody that lives in America. They're literally bringing in the health department now. Is in the gun control business. They claim that social welfare is for charity. It's for love and charity, they claim. Except for Representative Thompson mentioned briefly that she has a single mother in her district trying to feed herself and her kids. Got her food stamps denied. And look, you guys have different opinions on who should receive welfare and who shouldn't, but I think if there was any charity and there was someone who needed a little bring me up and boost, it should probably be the single American citizen mother, more than giving $10,000 debit cards to foreign invaders. Just think about where we're at right now. But no, they don't have time to deal with any of the affairs of American citizens. They're more worried about foreigners and foreign invaders. And now we have a health department that's worried about getting in gun control and coming after your guns. This seems so small to so many people. A lot of people are already saying things like, who cares? Just sign the form, sign the paperwork, whatever, poop on it, pee on it, throw it in the garbage, move on, nothing to see here. But it's the slow, slow creep. See, we now have over 26,000 gun control laws and regulations, rules, rule of law, rules on the books in this country, and growing if you start counting all the state levels. And we literally started off with a country that said the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And now we have tens of thousands of restrictions on the books. So it starts off with, well, the Michigan Department of Health and Human Services has this little brochure you have to read, and you have to sign for it. And it starts off there. But do you guys think that's the end of it, or do you think it's just the beginning? All of this is coming to your state or a state near you, because right at the same time that they're doing all this in Michigan, Michigan was a huge battleground state for the other side, because we haven't been traditionally anti-gun per se compared to some of the other states. But they've won in Michigan so far, and they've won like crazy in the past year in Michigan. The other side has. And they're using that as momentum. See, when they get a victory, they come harder. If they get a loss, they come harder. If nothing happens, they come harder. No matter what scenario you can think about, the other side just keeps coming harder and harder and harder. I've noticed a lot of times on our side, and I don't mean you guys, but everybody knows a FUD out there. Everybody knows somebody who actually does get it, and it's just too lazy to do anything whatsoever. If we get a victory, we kind of tap out. If we lose too much, our side likes to tap out. And then there's logistical things, like a lot of us have jobs. Can't make it to this rally or this event because it's during the day you work. Okay. Can't do it in the evening because you work. Can't do it on a weekend because you have something going on. Can't do it during a weekday because you have something going on. I know. I get it. That's what happens. And that's why you can literally see at these rallies, at these demonstrations, at these protests, where they're literally out there. As I've always said, politics is downstream from culture, where they're literally out there demanding and pushing these politicians into their side of the culture war. And you'll see them with like thousands will show up. Thousands will show up. And maybe 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 20 pro-Second Amendment people will show up to counter-protest. And then you have a protest of your own, a rally of your own, and maybe a couple hundred people show up max. That's what's happening right now. And I'm not blaming you guys in particular. I'm not blaming myself. I'm not blaming you. Like, probably none of us are doing a good enough job, especially not me. But I just want you guys to know that this is happening. And this is literally what's going on. So, with that said, cyber attacks going through. Mysterious hot air balloon. It's just hovering. And it's just doing whatever the heck it wants right now. Maybe since I've been live, they've done something with it, but probably not. Probably the agreement is to let it collect as much data and intel as it possibly can. Well, all that's going on right now. Think about that. Cyber attacks. Pharmacies going down. Have you guys read the reports on this? Good thing they weren't down too long, because some of these medications, people don't have their medication ASAP. They're in big, big trouble. We need to think about how we can get a hold of each other. See, it doesn't say to have a nice firearms collection. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It doesn't say for plenty of fun hours on the shooting range. The right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. It doesn't say because it's a wise investment, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. No. It actually doesn't say to hunt and put meat on the table, the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. They didn't need to write that down. If you didn't hunt, you didn't eat back then, obviously. No. The Second Amendment's beautiful because it doesn't just tell you the what. It doesn't just tell you the mandate on the government, because that's quite simple. Shall not be infringed. Don't tread on me. No, a well-regulated militia. Being necessary to the security of a free state. And people try to make this topic super complex, but it's actually like super, super simple. Duh. The Founding Fathers wrote it down while we're in the shape we're in 1789 and ratified it as the supreme law of the land in 1791. When they said a well-regulated militia was completely and utterly necessary to the security of a free state. And now here we are today. Where is this well-regulated militia that the Founding Fathers spoke of? They weren't talking about the National Guard. They weren't talking about the United States Army. They were talking about that the right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed because we, the people, the civilians, were supposed to be equally armed, but that wasn't enough, and more well-armed than the United States Army and of any foreign country's army. Because this well-regulated militia, being necessary to the security of a free state, was to fight off enemies both foreign and domestic. It was to stop invading Brit, maybe invading Spaniards of that time. And it was also to fight off a potentially tyrannical government here in the United States. Because even long before the Constitution was written, before the Bill of Rights, even before the Declaration and before any of this, the Founding Fathers were writing the Federalist Papers and the Anti-Federalist Papers. And there were arguments on whether we should have a government at all and of different extents we should have government. But even the ones that were more pro having a government, if you look at the Federalist Papers, they talked about, well, what role would the government have? Why would we have a government? And they said, well, if men were angels, we would need no government at all. But since men are not angels, we are going to need a government. The only reason the government would exist is to protect your natural God-given rights. Thomas Jefferson, after that, in the Declaration of Independence, would write, these are the laws of nature and of nature's God. The government would not ever be granting rights. These rights superseded the United States government, and they knew that before the United States of America was even the United States of America. Before there was the United States Constitution, there was the Confederation. They said, well, since men are certainly not angels, we are going to need to put a government in place, and that's to protect us from ourselves. We would become a Republican form of government. I'm not talking about the party that has the color red. I'm talking about a republic, a constitutional republic, if you can keep it, like Ben Franklin said, where we, the people, would be represented by representatives. We would not have a democracy, and the more people keep talking about democracy shows how much trouble we're in right now. The biggest conservative pundits there are talk about our democracy all day long. No, we would not have a democratic elections in this country. Not on the federal level, certainly. You would have your representatives. They were supposed to be close to home. The representatives at the founding represented a lot less people in the United States Congress than they do today. And maybe that's the case. Maybe there's just too many people here for this to work anymore. But if that's the case, why are they bussing in millions and millions and millions? I just brought that up for you guys to think about. The United States Senate currently is done under a democratic process. Everybody, all 10 million people in the state of Michigan vote for 2 United States senators. But that's actually not the way the founding fathers wrote it up. That's not what they had designed. See, a lot of people don't even pay attention to their state legislator anymore. Think about that. A lot of people have no clue who their state representative is, who their state senator is. And I've been spending lots of time getting involved, boots on the ground, with these local public servants, these local representatives and senators, county commissioners, township board of trustees, to remind you guys that our local government was supposed to be the most important thing. We weren't supposed to be the all-encompassing federal government of the United States. No, our country's supposed to be these United States of America, with the state being of the utmost importance, and with your local hometown even being more important than that, and you actually being the most important thing in your government. But when this country was founded, the state legislator would pick the United States senators. Did you guys know that? And when they made it where it was just a democratic vote, where just the people of the tyranny of the majority would get to pick who the United States senators would be, it took a lot of power away from the states. And it took a lot of power away from your hometown, where you could actually go to. And I guarantee you guys, if you want to meet your state representative and your state senator and you haven't been able to yet, it's because you just haven't tried very hard. Because, see, all of these do have coffee hours and events that they go to. And sometimes they're your neighbor. Sometimes you go to church with them. Sometimes you see them in the grocery store. Sometimes you help them fix their car. You hang out with them if you want to, or you go protest them if you want to, depending who they are and who you are. But no, they took all that away, where now people don't even know who their state rep and senator are in so many cases. And that is what's led to a lot of this. And that is what a lot of this problem is, why we have unelected people making all these decisions, and these decisions just keep going higher and higher up to where they're in Washington, D.C., which seems like it's a totally different planet. Like, you can't relate to Washington, D.C., and that's good, because if you can't relate to Washington, D.C., you're actually a normal person. And it means you probably still have a good heart. So that's not a compliment if you can actually relate to what's going on in Washington, D.C. Of course you can't relate to that. It's insane what goes on in our country's capital. But they took a power away, and that is not the United States Senate. The way it is comprised now is not how the United States was set up. It is not what the founding fathers envisioned. They don't really talk about that too much in history books. Like, who even talks about this stuff anymore? I hope I'm not boring you guys because I'm telling you stories from long ago. But your state legislators are supposed to vote. If you go back to the founding fathers, when they talked about this great experiment on self-governance, my state representative, Jamie Thompson, my state senator, Joe Bellino, were supposed to go and vote for who Michigan's United States senators would be. And they took a lot of power away from state legislators when they passed that constitutional amendment to do that. And I truly believe America died a little bit that day, and it died quite a bit that day, actually. See, this plan's been going on for a long time where they're trying to get people more disconnected from their government. Because I get comments all the time that they're like, dude, just give it up. There's no reason. There's nothing you can do anymore. And that's exactly what they want. They want you to feel hopeless. They want you to feel in despair. They want you to feel helpless. Because helpless people often give rise and almost always give rise to the most tyrannical possible governments that we've ever seen on this earth. And then these tyrannical governments always take people's guns, and they usually end up killing millions and tens of millions, and in some cases, hundreds of millions of people. Yeah, that's literally what happens. So they said, well, since men are not angels, we're going to need to have a government, but it's only going to be there to protect people's natural God-given rights. And they said, but what about this government? They said, do you think this could become tyrannical? I could just imagine one of the founding fathers saying that. But hold on a minute. What if this government were about to form? What if it were to become tyrannical? It probably took half a second, and the rest of them were like, duh, of course it's going to become tyrannical. Well, yeah. So what are we going to do about that? Well, in the same Federalist paper, they said, if the government were angels, we wouldn't need any checks or balances. But since the government are certainly, and I would add most certainly not angels, we're going to need to have both internal and external checks on our government. Think about that for a minute. Look, if everybody was perfect, we wouldn't need to have any government at all. Everything would be great. I believe you will find that in heaven, but you'll never find that on this earth. And the founding fathers knew that. So they had to come up with a plan. And they said, well, we'll have internal checks in government. Let's divide our government up into 3 branches. We shall have the legislative, the executive, and the judiciary. The legislative will make laws. The United States Congress will make laws. The Constitution literally says that Congress makes laws, not bureaucrats working for the executive branch. And the executive branch will faithfully execute the laws of this land. And the judiciary will judge whether any type of laws, or if there's any disputes between states, things to do with interstate commerce between states, they would adjudicate that and decide whether it's unconstitutional or not. Right? I mean, that's a quick way to sum it up. Those would be the internal checks that are governed by different governments. You have the different branches, and you would even split the House and Senate off. A lot of times people say, well, Congress and then the Senate. Congress encompasses the House of Representatives and the Senate. The lower chamber is the United States House. The upper chamber is the United States Senate. But keep in mind, your United States representative lives in your geographic area. Actually, they don't have to live there anymore, I don't think. Maybe they do. They keep changing all those rules. But they rent an apartment there. Let's just leave it at that if they need to, right? You guys know how that works. They'll import somebody in from across the country that's never lived there in their life, but they live here now. They have a P.O. box, but the way the founding fathers intended it, they live somewhat close to you, where they would know what was going on in your area of your state and in your hometown and your counties, surrounding counties, and they go to D.C. Now, there would be less senators. That would be the upper chamber. But the senators were to be elected by your state legislators. Now, your state legislators are amongst a lot smaller areas. So my state representative has about 90,000 people in her district. That's a lot, but some of you guys were hanging out with her last night. So you could actually literally hang out with your state rep in real life. And if they're an awesome state rep, like my rep, Jamie Thompson, she was at the shooting range with us hanging out, having an awesome time at the fundraiser for Representative candidate Josh Powell. We had that event yesterday. I shared it here. So These are our internal checks. Your state legislators are supposed to be an internal check on the federal government by electing your senators. That's gone now. They wiped that out. But the founding fathers said we would have to have internal and external checks on this government. And who were those external checks? Well, the external checks are we the people. That's why, as Heller properly decided, we didn't need Heller to say this. I mean, we did because of the times we're in, but we didn't need Heller to tell us this. The founding fathers told us this 250 years ago. But the right to keep and bear arms is an individual right. And you need these guns, and you need to have this right that shall not be infringed so people can assemble into a well-regulated militia to protect our homeland from foreign invaders. We've got those right now. And from our own government. And we certainly have that right now too, don't we? Who do you guys think is the biggest enemy? I'm going to read a couple of these chats. And then we're going to talk about Texas and how Texas was formed as a country, as a republic, and how it became annexed by the United States, and how actually, if you look at that, I'm afraid history is going to repeat itself again in a bad way. I'm not saying it's bad that Texas is a state, but we need to learn from how Texas became a state. So shout out to all the people of Texas. We're going to talk about that right now. But who do you guys think the bigger enemy is at this point? I mean, it's not just a trope. This is something to actually seriously think about when people take an oath against all enemies, foreign and domestic. When you think about these internal and external checks on government, who's our biggest enemy right now? Foreign invaders or our own government? You don't have to answer, obviously, but if you don't answer in the chat, just think about it. That's all I'm asking you to do at the very least, is just think about that. Have you thought about that? Who's the biggest enemy right now against the United States of America? Is it a particular foreign invader? Is it China? Or is the United States of America the biggest threat to the United States of America? Has anyone thought about that? Boom Boom 2A started actually right before the stream started with a generous super chat. Thanks, man. I appreciate it, dude. He says, see you guys and gals in a little while. And hopefully you've been in the chat hanging out this whole time, man. I appreciate it. Aries God, thank you for the super chat. Says, from 1 to 10, how likely is an AWB this year? Michigan or federal government? Federal government, probably not this year, but depending how this Cargill case goes with the bump stock, the ATF may be able to put in if we lose this case, ATF may be able to do a nationwide assault weapons ban. Think I'm kidding? I'm not. I said may be able to. We'll see. Michigan, dude, it's crazy right now in Michigan, man. The Michigan House of Representatives is tied 54-54. That 2-seat majority the Democrats had last year is gone because 2 of them resigned. 2 of the Dems resigned to become mayor. That's why I was in Westland, Michigan last night with some awesome people. Let's see who was there. We had State Representative Timmy Beeson, State Representative Angela Regas. My favorite State Representative Jamie Thompson was there. I was there. South Paul, who's a regular of the channel and over on Locals, he was there hanging out. We had a couple guys that I hang out with over on Twitter called Avster Bone, Ren Brimley, and I shouldn't be saying names because I forgot somebody. Jane Locke, who's in the chat right now, who I have in one of my pictures. Let me think about here. Dude, I shot Jane's Taurus 709. Is that what it was? 709 Slim? I liked that. That's one that I don't have. We were shooting guns together, hanging out last night. Look, dude, there's a special election in Westland area, Westland, Canton, the surrounding areas. His name is Josh Powell. Spread the word to your friends and family who live in that district. This was previously Kevin Coleman's district, okay? Now he's mayor. Before that, he was a state rep. Right now, the Michigan House of Representatives is gridlocked. This is going to be like super, super hard, guys, but there's like a chance, okay? The other side, whether they have a chance or not, they just keep fighting. We need to be that way too. If we have a chance, we need to. If Josh Powell can win this race, it'll stay gridlocked. The Michigan House of Representatives tied. And I would say there'll be probably no chance of an AWB this year. If the Democrats flip it back over again. If you notice, you haven't been hearing as much about Michigan gun control bills, have you? I mean, there's some stuff they're brewing right now, but it's all in the back room and kind of on the sly. And trust me, Democrats in Lansing, I know about those bills you guys are working on right now. I have my insider sources too. But look, right now, you're not hearing as much. If they can flip it back to a Democrat majority in the House, look out, dude, look out. So we'll have to see how this special election goes in April. It's very, very important. That's why I was there last night, and Jane Locke was there last night, and so many good people, actually. If any of you guys were there last night, sound off in the chat. I hate it when I start saying names because then I forgot somebody, and you know what I'm saying. I don't have a script. Patrick Fellers with the super chat. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. He says the leaders of this country are using a form of divide and conquer. Yes, sir. Divide us with race, religion, politics, income, and gender, then disarm and take control. You betcha, man. I'm going to pull up a tweet here in a second. There's just a little break. I'm just stopping for a minute to read these chats. I have some crazy stuff to show you guys in just a couple minutes here, but yeah. Yeah. Race and religion. Bingo. They're coming after white people like they never, ever have before. And they're coming after Christians like they never, ever have before. The other side. Starting to become a pretty big deal. But you're not supposed to talk about that. Crypto Crazy with a super chat. A super sticker. Thank you. I appreciate the support. And I can't put the actual sticker itself up here. But thank you for supporting the channel, guys. I take off work to do the stuff that I do. And you guys being generous the way you are right now. And those who support monthly. You guys are what funds this and keeps it going. You didn't hear me start off by saying this show is sponsored by this certain hair trimmer or gold company or whatever, because I'm only sponsored by people I like, and I don't trust most of the people out there who would sponsor. Z with the super chat and a channel member. Thank you. Says these 2A protesters are employees that get paid to protest. It's their job. Yep, I agree. The topic doesn't matter to them, and they just show up for work. Yes, you're mostly right, but there's a lot of them that it does matter to that are very passionately and rabidly anti-2A. So you're right about the first part for sure, and I'd say at least partially right on the second part. But trust me, they got thousands of impassioned college kids to come and descend on the steps of Lansing. So in the very least, in that case, they were passionate, all right. Trust me. And our side's passionate too, to a point, just not very effectively passionate. Like really, like not at all. They're literally trying to get Clarence Thomas off the bench, and mainly like while they're there, like burning the whole country down. Like literally, remember when they lit the whole country on fire? Mostly peaceful protests a couple of years back. While they're doing that, while they're flooding the Michigan State Capitol and getting their wishes of the gun control passed, most of our side just sits there and says Clarence Thomas to their other conservative friends, actually. You know what I mean? Like whenever I talk about a lot of these like fundamental topics, we've talked about like literally how the United States was established and what the internal, external checks will be on government. And the biggest response I ever get is, but 2A EDU. You're fear-mongering. There's nothing to worry about. Dude, there's a Chinese balloon, allegedly, probably, over our country right now. We just had a major cyber attack, in my opinion, just now. 4 major gun control bills just went into effect in Michigan and are now laws. And these people are sitting there saying, oh, you're paranoid. Ain't nobody coming for your guns. And I'm just sitting there thinking, huh? What? 2A EDU, just stop, breathe. There's nothing to talk about. No need to do these streams anymore. The Bruin decision. We won Bruin. It's going to save us all. I'm like, okay, but what are we going to do to keep fighting to save? Because it didn't say the Supreme Court of the United States that will save us all and our right to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. That's not what the Second Amendment says at all. So the other side, which in many cases they are getting paid to do it, but trust me, a lot of them are just rabidly anti-gun and have been brainwashed by the education industrial complex. Jimmy Carter, That was a sea change in the United States. Established a United States Department of Education, something the founding fathers would have puked over. Well, probably fought another Revolutionary War over. The founding fathers would have probably fought about 50 Revolutionary Wars just from the stuff I'm talking about in this live stream tonight. You guys have read the Tree of Liberty, part of the letter that Thomas Jefferson wrote, haven't you? I've read it on this stream before, and maybe I will next week. But like the number one thing I get back is the left is just coming through and they're hoarding and they're mobbing and they're controlling the mass media. They're controlling the education systems. They're controlling the pharmaceutical industrial complex, the military industrial complex, the food industrial complex. Look up oligarchy. I mentioned that earlier in the stream, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Our side, for the most part, not you guys, I'm talking our side collectively. Keep in mind, there's 100 million gun owners in this country, okay? If they were all like the people in this chat, we'd probably be okay right now. But even a lot of people on YouTube, they just come back and say stuff like, but Clarence Thomas will save us. I'm like, yeah, and he's a great Supreme Court justice, and he's probably the best we have, but wow, I just kind of hold my head. But the other side are there, like, no matter what. Patrick Fowlers with another super chat. Thanks, man. I appreciate it, dude. He says swamp. Oh, boy. He's talking about the swamp. You guys know D.C. was literally built on a swamp, right? So this is literal, too. Literal and metaphorically swamp. Swamp, tract of wet, spongy land, often having a growth of certain trees and other vegetation, but unfit for cultivation. Oddly fitting for DC. Dude, oddly fitting, like 100% fitting. I agree with you, man. I agree. Wow. Marco Polo with a super chat and a channel member. Thanks, man. He says, everyone have a good night. See you on Locals. Well, I'm not going to bed yet, but good night to you if you're still here, and I'm looking forward to seeing you and hopefully everybody that's here tonight over on my Locals live stream. The link is down there in the description. DLD After Dark. What's happening, man? How you doing? Thanks for the super chat. Channel member. Put out a new channel members video in the last week. Hopefully you guys saw that and liked it. He says, I heart you. I love you too, man. Keep on fighting the good fight. And I know you guys are back in a battleground again in the great state of Virginia. And I know you guys have got the other side on the warpath there like crazy. So keep up the good work with the DLD After Dark channel, as well as all of your local endeavors, man. Boom Boom 2A with another super chat and a channel member. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. He says it feels like the USA is in the way a lot, followed by communists and terrorists. You know, some people are in the way, and then other people, just think about that barbed wire down in Texas. They put up barbed wire, Constantine wire, whatever you want to call it. And to stop people from illegally invading us. And the federal government goes in there to tear it down. Wow. United States government can't get out of its own way. There might even be more sinister than that, actually. Colin L with a super chat and a big time channel member. Thanks, man. I appreciate the continued support. He says, living in Phoenix, winter is great. Born a Youper, always a Youper. Thank you, 2A. Big change of weather there. Although it's pretty warm in Michigan. Well, it's going to be like 35 tomorrow, and then it's going to be up in the 60s by Tuesday. So, yeah, what gives on that? But, hey, I don't blame you, man. Get out of the snow and still have your heart in the UP. UP stands for the Upper Peninsula, by the way. So it's spelled Youper, Y-O-O-P-E-R, if you're a Youper. But sometimes people ask this, Colin. They literally do. I'll read comments later, and they're like, what's a Youper? Michigan is a peninsula, but it's not a peninsula. It's like a couple peninsulas, right? There's the Upper Peninsula, and there's the Lower Peninsula. So there you guys go. You know, you can kind of like this. See what I mean? Ish. Like, oh, hold on. It's blocking it. Put a little angle on there. Yeah. People do ask me that, Colin, all the time. Make sure you're educating these guys. Make sure you educate all these Southern boys. They'll come in and be like, what do you mean the UP? Michigan's two peninsulas. And Michigan has been overtaken by a very slim majority that's run roughshod and become a very extremely tyrannical government. Bill Camper has just gifted 5 2A EDU memberships. Well, thanks, Bill, and a channel member himself. I appreciate you being a longtime supporter of the channel. And yeah, make sure the 5 of you go back and check out some of my members only videos where we talk about snails and stuff that has nothing to do usually with politics or guns or anything like that. Just fun stuff that some of you guys like. So I was thinking about Texas just a minute ago. Oh boy, we've got another Youper here. Trolls live under the bridge. That's oh boy. We're not going to get into the whole Youper thing. Are we, Pillbox Bunker? What do you think? Pillbox Bunker was a Youper at one time. I just have one more quick super chat. I'm going to show you guys. We're going to look at how Texas was formed and how that could lead to the demise of the United States. I'm glad Texas is here, though, so don't take that the wrong way. Kevin with a super chat. Thank you. I appreciate it, man. He said, thank you, Sovereign Men Movement, Law of Admiralty, and Lord Poseidon. I'm not exactly familiar with the details on that, but thank you for supporting the channel. And I will say for sure that we are definitely ruled by a tyrannical government right now that is not what the founding fathers intended, no matter what. All right, so let's look at here at the Texas Revolution. We'll look at this together real quick because some of you guys like visuals, right? Texas Revolution. We could write a book about this. We could think about this a lot, but I want you guys to think about how Texas became its own republic or its own sovereign country, its own nation state, right? Annexed by the United States. And there was a couple things in here that I thought were very, very interesting. Now, I'm glad Texas is a state. And Texas may be one of our best last hopes with the valiant effort that a lot of Texans are doing to try to close up this huge hole in the border and try to plug it up from the invaders. But it's very interesting how Texas was formed, and then you think about what's going on right now, okay? Like literally right now. So, history of Texas. We could go back a long, long time ago, but let's look at the Spanish, the conquistadors. Spanish Texas from 1690 to 1821. Mexico had a revolutionary war, if you will, a revolution. And you could say Texas beat the Spaniards, or you could say Spain kind of lost interest in Mexico. We could talk about this for hours, but I think it'd be fair to say it was a bit of both. Okay, so they defeated and won and kicked the Spanish out of what is now Mexico. And at that time, Mexico, well, you'll see in 1 second, was different territories that are now part of the United States. Mexico obviously extended in. So Spanish Texas, 1690 to 1821, because the Spaniards were colonized and controlled that whole area, right? I think most of you guys know that. Okay. Then it was Mexican Texas from 1821 to 1836. Then it became the Republic of Texas from 1836 to 1845. Now, how did it go from Spain to Mexico to Texas and then to the United States? And this is one of those things where history might not completely repeat itself, but boy, oh boy, does history repeat itself. Because first of all, you had colonizers, and Spain had been colonizing portions of the world that didn't want to be ruled over by them. And sometimes when you're in an area long enough, it just kind of gets old and it's just too much resources, and you either give up on it, or because you're completely like broken, bankrupt, or the natives get restless and they want to fight. And then we have violent takeovers. We've seen a mix of both happen so many times throughout this world. Makes me think of the United States. who has in somewhat recent times, meaning, well, over 100 years now, decided that it's going to be the world's policeman. How many years and how many wars and continuing wars have we fought in the Middle East? We blow it up, and then in the end of the day, a lot of good American people die. And look at the Bagram Air Force Base, how that was taken over within minutes. The way the current former vice president cowardly retreated and did like one of the worst tactical jobs ever, like a complete debacle. In fact, they did so bad, there's no way, in my opinion, they could have done it that bad on purpose. Or unless they did it on purpose. But sometimes if you look at the United States in our lifetime, you go and occupy a country for a long time and you try to be world's policeman, you try to make them think like you, and you try to make them act like you. At the end of the day, they ain't going to act like you. So you give up blood and treasure, and then at the end of the day, you're kicked out or you just move on because it doesn't really accomplish much. So we think about Spain colonizing, and I think about the United States in so many ways. We have so many problems here. And while the United States is simultaneously attacking Americans who still believe in the Constitution, we still want to play world's policeman, and we're going to control this country. We're going to control that country. Think about that for a minute. So Mexico takes over. Now, here's what's interesting here. Let's think about how Texas became a country or a republic, and then how it became a state and what's happening in the United States right now. And I'm just reading from Wikipedia, which is like completely generic and like whitewash and has all kinds of bias. Because a lot of times people come and be like, yeah, right, dude. It's like, well, there's actually a lot more to this. But I just want to go over it real quick, just for you to think about. Following the Mexican War of Independence, Texas became part of Mexico. Under the Constitution of 1824, which defined the country as a federal republic, the provinces of Texas and Coahuila, I just can't pronounce it very well, were combined to become the state Coahuila y Tejas, which is basically Texas. Texas was granted only a single seat in the state legislature, which met in Stelio, hundreds of miles away. I'm giving all of you guys who are grammar snobs ways to correct my grammar. People love correcting my grammar, so I want to make a good comment generator, and I want all of you guys to feel important who correct my grammar. So this is a grammar comment generator right here, which is good for the algorithm. So are thumbs up. So don't forget to leave a thumbs up. So I'm turning on the comment generator by trying to talk about Mexican and former Mexican cities, which met in Celillo, hundreds of miles away. After months of grumbling by Tanos, Texans, we'll just call Mexican-born residents of Texas, outraged at the loss of their political autonomy, state officials agreed to make Texas a department of the new state, with a de facto capital in San Antonio. Think about this for a minute, and this is what I want you guys to think about. What happens when you bring a bunch of people that aren't from your country into your country? And think about the United States right now, where we're bringing tons of people that aren't from our country into our country. Continue. Texas was very sparsely populated, with fewer than 3,500 residents and only about 200 soldiers, which made it extremely vulnerable to attacks by native tribes and American filibusters. And when they say filibusters, the definition and context here is a filibuster, also known as a freebooter, is someone who engages in an unauthorized military expedition into a foreign country or territory to foster or support a political revolution or secession. This term is usually applied to United States citizens who incited insurrections across Latin America. So, in the hopes that an influx of settlers could control the Indian raids, the bankrupt Mexican government liberalized immigration policies for the region. Ooh, think about that for a minute. Look at the bankrupt United States. The governor of Michigan, Gretchen Whitmer, says you should go to the airport and pick up illegals and put them right in your home. That's a new big ad campaign that's going around right now, literally. They want to get rid of people like me and people like you, but they want to bring in as many foreigners as possible. Think about this. I'm going to read this one more time. In the hopes that an influx of settlers could control the Indian raids, the bankrupt Mexican government liberalized immigration policies for the region. Finally able to settle legally in Texas, Anglos from the United States soon vastly outnumbered the natives. Most of the immigrants came from the southern United States. Many were slave owners, and most brought with them. This is like I said, I'm choosing a liberal source for a reason, but it still proves my point of worry with them significant prejudices. Now, the government's prejudice against white people, I would note, against other races. Attitudes often applied to the Tejanos. Mexico's official religion was Roman Catholicism, yet the majority of the immigrants were Protestants who distrusted the Catholics. Bringing people in of different colors, bringing in people of different nationalities, and bringing in people of different religions. See where this is heading to, right? This is still considered part of Mexico at this time. The Mexican government invited them in, even though they had completely contrary beliefs to many of the natives of Mexico. What do you guys think? Do you think a lot of them they're bringing in here love the United States? Or do they have contrary beliefs to the United States? Mexican authorities became increasingly concerned about the stability of the region. The colonies teetered on the brink of revolt in 1829 after Mexico abolished slavery. In response, President Anastasio Bustamante implemented the laws of April 6, 1830, which, among other things, prohibited further immigration to Texas from the United States, increased taxes, and reiterated the ban on slavery. Settlers simply circumvented or ignored the laws. By 1834, an estimated 30,000 Anglos lived in Coahuila, Tejas, compared to only 7,800 Mexican-born residents. Now, if you look, they brag every day, the other side does, that white people are going to be the minority, and they brag about it. Everything you're seeing here in complete and utter reverse. Tell me whether you think this has to do with anything, and tell me why the Founding Fathers put the Second Amendment in place. By the end of 1835, almost 5,000 enslaved Africans and African Americans lived in Texas, making up 13% of the non-Indian population. In 1832, Antonio Lopez de Santa Anna led a revolt to overthrow Bustamante. Texians or English-speaking settlers used the rebellion as an excuse to take up arms. By mid-August, all Mexican troops had been expelled from East Texas. Buoyed by their success, Texians held two political conventions to persuade Mexican authorities to weaken the laws of April 6, 1830. Bustamante was replaced by the liberal federalist Valentin Gomez Farias, who would attempt to reach a compromise with the Texans. In November 1833, the Mexican government attempted to address some of their concerns, repealing some sections of the law and granting the colonists further concessions. So the Mexican government bowed down to the foreigners that were in their country and kept giving them more and giving them more and giving them more, including increased representation in the state legislature. Stephen F. Austin, who had brought the first American settlers to Texas, wrote to a friend that every evil complained of has been remedied. Mexican authorities were quietly watchful, concerned that the colonists were maneuvering toward secession. Santa Anna overthrew Gomez Farias in April 1834 and soon revealed himself to be a centralist, inaugurating the Centralist Republic of Mexico in 1835. The 1824 Constitution was overturned. State legislators were dismissed. Militias disbanded. Federalists throughout Mexico were appalled. Citizens in the state of Oaxaca and Zacatecas took up arms. After Santa Anna's troops subdued the rebellion in Zacatecas in May, he gave his troops 2 days to pillage the city. Over 2,000 non-combatants were killed. That's after they had disbanded the militias, disarmed the people. The government of Coahuila, Tejas, Augustin Viesca refused to dissolve the legislature, instead ordering the secession reconvene in Bexar, further from the influence of the Mexican army. Although prominent Tejano Juan Seguin raised a militia company to assist the governor, the Bexar City Council ordered him not to intervene, and Viesca was arrested before he reached Texas. They go to talk about public opinion in Texas was divided. They talk about how it kicked off, and Texas ended up seceding and revolting against the country that it was part of, Mexico, and became its own country by having an influx of foreigners come into Mexico who wanted to cling to the ideals of their previous country, not the country they had moved to. By the country of Mexico compromising again, they ended up losing a huge part of their country to the Republic of Texas. Then the United States would come in and annex, if you will, because these were people that still had American ideals and wanted to become Americans. And look, I'm glad Texas is a state, but Texas became a state because the Mexican government was so foolish that they would keep bringing in foreign immigrants to the point where there were more foreigners than there were nationalists. I don't know. I hope I'm not the only one that might see a little parallel there. And why now, one of our most border defending states that we have, and one of the greatest states in this country, is only a state because Mexico was basically just as foolish as the United States government is today. And if that's not kind of irony, and hoping not, but history possibly repeating itself, I don't know what is. I'm going to give you guys a couple updates real quick on a couple things going on in Michigan, where we find out that these universal background checks, this licensing scheme, keeps getting worse, actually. Keeps getting worse. Because over here on my locals, let me pull this up real quick here. Southpaw, who I hung out with last night in real life, he shared something on the locals community here, and it's a screenshot from a place just down the road called Huron Valley Guns. Now, there's a belief, and there's different ways to read this law, not a lawyer, that if you don't have a CPL and you want to go to the gun shop to get a gun, you have to first go to your local police jurisdiction. So it could be city police or sheriff's department, and get a purchase permit that you'd have to pay for, maybe wait in line for, maybe drive really far for. Then you have to get the background check there, which they use NICS, the same exact NICS check that you would then go to the gun shop and get again. Double background check is how most of these gun shops are interpreting this. Not all, because there's mixed information getting put out. I found like 10 contradictory statements by 10 different police jurisdictions, and it's literally turning into a calamity. But here's one from Huron Valley that's not too far from me. If your local PD is in Oakland County, it is Oakland County Sheriff's Department, and you want a license to purchase, they put in parentheses, it hurts to say that, you have to go to 1200 North Telegraph. Yeah, that's like way down in the city on the complete opposite end of Oakland County of where Huron's at. Substations don't do them. You need an appointment, and you can call them and then they give the phone number. I've heard of a couple towns around here in Michigan, not too far away, that are only giving out purchase permits 1 day a week. Another one I heard about is giving them out 2 days a week. Now we found out that if your local PD is the Oakland County Sheriff's Department, that you're going to have to make an appointment to go purchase a permit, to beg for the privilege of getting this permit, because it's not just, you don't just walk in there and pay them the $8 to $10. There's a provision in there that we're going to have to see how this goes, but it's if they believe you're not in good character. It's kind of a good character clause, if you will. Okay? That's not the exact wordings. I'm summarizing here just for brevity's sake, but it's the next check, and there could be another provision that, look out for this, I think will get abused, where they can probably use some sort of discretion. But at the very least, you're paying money. You're having to drive all the way across. I mean, this is a big county that they're talking about here, Oakland County. I live in Monroe County, but this is a lot closer to me than I'd like it to be. This is right in my backyard, if you will, like within an hour or two away. I say an hour or two away because this is a huge county that takes an hour to drive across the darn thing. You would first have to go. So if you live in the rural outskirts of Oakland County, you'd have to drive, depending on traffic, a long ways, maybe up to an hour, to go to the main Oakland County Sheriff's Department by appointment only to apply for a purchase permit, then go back to the gun shop, who is then going to run a NICS check on you, and you'll fill out the Form 4473. So that's literally what's happening with that, which I think is completely and utterly crazy. Have you guys heard about this? It might not apply to anybody who's watching right now. And if it doesn't, it's probably not of too much interest. But that's what's happening. And we're going to keep seeing things like this continue to unravel. Now, this isn't necessarily Second Amendment related, but the next thing I'm going to show you is kind of startling. And I think it's curious that while we have cyber attacks, last week, literally, imminent threat, remember that? We have huge cyber attacks. Now there's this balloon over the country yet again. Are you kidding me right now? The United States of America. Do you guys think we're still a military superpower? Or do we have like a super duper military that's ruled by people who hate America? I don't know, but like, how could these weird balloons just be floating around for this long? Is it a total innocent balloon? That is an option. It could be. It could be just Jimmy's science fair project, and he just made this state-of-the-art balloon. I guess. If you want to believe that, great. I hope you sleep well tonight. I'll sleep well tonight too, but Or is it that we just can't do anything about it? We can't shoot it down. It's just so powerful. The United States no longer has the military might to be able to take down a balloon. Do you think that's the option? So A, and there was B, or C, do we not want to take it down? Because we want the Chinese to get as much spy info as we can if it's indeed a Chinese balloon. Allegedly, for all of the YouTube people who love to watch these live streams. What is it? Are we to the point where we can't even... Like, we can't take care of a balloon, or do we not want to take care of a balloon? Okay. Hawaii goes by the spirit of aloha. These Michigan gun laws that just went into effect keep getting worse every day. It just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. And they talked about there's so many similarities to what happened in Mexico and why Mexico lost a big part of its country. By being stupid. Now, look, obviously I have intrinsic bias here, and I know a lot of you guys do too. Like, those of you who live in Texas are glad it's part of the United States, and I'm glad it's part of the United States too, obviously. But I think we could all agree, even the Texans, that was a stupid thing for Mexico to do. Just pretend you're Mexican for a minute here. That was pretty stupid for Mexico to allow themselves to lose a huge part of their country by having some really, really stupid policies. And that is how Mexico lost a big part of its country. And Wikipedia article talked about race in there. It talked about religion in there. Pretty interesting. I'm going to show something here that was... This is on Twitter. Michigan Representative Josh Shriver's channel, or his account, I guess you'd call it, not channel on Twitter. This is his tweet from February 22nd. The anti-white section of Michigan's Democrat budget Now, I did have somebody that was consulting me on this. I wanted to make sure I knew exactly the particulars. So this was a budget from a couple years ago that was just passed in June. Okay. Because they'll write up the budget like ahead of time, I guess, and then it gets passed. Okay. So, section 1017.1. Now, this is in a country that passed the Civil Rights Act. And this is the state of Michigan, section 1017.1. And this is from Michigan Representative Josh Shriver, who they're going after like they haven't gone after anyone in a while. I believe they're going after him because he's a Christian in part. I think that's a big part of it. Huge part of it. I think they're going after him because of the color of his skin. And what do you guys think about this? This is a screenshot that he shared. Section 1017.1 from the funds appropriated in Part 1 for minority-owned business support, the department shall award grants to minority-owned businesses or nonprofit business organizations to implement small business development initiatives for minority-owned businesses in this state. And it literally goes through to talk about all of the stipulations of it. Total estimated cost of this project is $10 million. The tentative completion date is September 30th, 2028. They go through and talk about a bunch of their other woke agenda that the department shall seek award not less than 25% of funds in Part 1 to support local small businesses and alternative energy sectors, including electric vehicles. Then it goes on, $500,000 shall be awarded to a nonprofit economic development organization located in a city with a population between 106,000 and 108,000, and a county with a population between 280,000 and 290,000, according to the most recent federal decennial census for a business accelerator program. So they're talking about the ways they're going to put this money through. White people aren't allowed to apply for this. We live in a country and we live in a state, if you live in the state of Michigan, where the government has a budget that says we will spend money unless your skin's a certain color, and then you're not allowed to apply. You said, well, hold on a minute. I was taught in school that nobody any longer had to ride on the back of a bus anymore due to the color of their skin. Yeah, you were taught that in school. Sure, you were, obviously. You're like, wait, but hold on a minute. They couldn't have a bathroom that was for certain colors of people. Yeah, you were taught that in school too. True. But I thought the Civil Rights Act was passed. You think to yourself, oh, but it was passed, and it actually did pass. Except for now, there's grants for businesses and nonprofits that some people are allowed to apply for. And some people aren't allowed to apply for, depending whether you're a minority or not. What do you guys think? Interesting topic, because I think about the Texas Revolution and the Mexican Revolution, and then I think of where all these people are coming from now. And Wikipedia was talking about race and religion ideology back then. And guess what's going on right now? Race and religion ideology all over again. Except for in so many ways. Things have been reversed, and they're complete opposite of what they were back then. Josh Shriver tweeted about a particular type of theory, they call it. It has something to do with what they call replacement. You can go on his Twitter feed and read about it. And the black Speaker of the House stripped him of all of his committees and got rid of his staff, where we now have a current sitting representative in Michigan with no staff, no committees. A white representative was sanctioned for allegedly saying racist things, according to what the Democrats and the mainstream media is saying, was sanctioned and stripped of his staff and his committees by the black Speaker of the House. So, yeah, I'd say race has as much to do with what's going on right now in this country as it ever has. And as it did back when, well, it was the Spanish Republic, and it was the Mexican Republic, and it was the Republic of Texas, which was then annexed by the United States. So there's a lot of comparisons between the two things. Here's him showing pictures of Representative Steve Carra, who is calling out the Speaker of the House. And Representative Josh Shriver said, as we sleep tonight, colleague Rep. Steve Carra continues his week-long campout in front of Speaker Joe Tate's office to protest the racist portion of the Democrat budget that gives tax dollars to non-whites only. And there he is. There's his cot where and he may still be out there sleeping right now. I haven't gotten any updates like tonight, but there's where he's sleeping in the hallway to protest to the speaker. And there's a picture of Michigan Representative Steve Carra right there. Did you guys even know this was going on? This is literally going on in the state of Michigan right now. While the state of Michigan is putting in gun control laws like we haven't seen in the state of Michigan in a long time. And yeah, literally crazy. All right, I'm going to take a quick peek at the chat here. And then I'm going to jump off and look forward to my locals stream tomorrow night. So make sure you guys are members of my locals community. I had a really good time hanging out with all of you guys who came out to support Josh Powell last night. I encourage you guys to do more of that yourself. Get involved in your local elections. Okay. If you're in that area, the whole Westland, Canton-ish area, I recommend you get involved with Josh Powell because he's a staunch Second Amendment supporter. And somebody asked me earlier, what's the odds of an AWB? That all depends what happens here in April. So think about that. But I encourage you guys all to get behind. If there is good people in office in your state, in your county, in your township, get behind them because they need your help. They're in a dogfight right now. They need your help. The Constitution needs your help. They need to help you. You need to help them. There should be a symbiotic relationship, obviously. Look, if there's nobody good, a lot more people like you need to run yourselves or friends of yours who still care about America and the Second Amendment. You should look into running for local office yourself. Now, that'll take care of the internal checks. Then there's the external checks. You guys need to make sure you're prepared. Make sure you're well armed and you understand why the Second Amendment was put there. Make sure you have your provisions for your communication, your food supply, your medicine. Maybe you have alternative power sources. Maybe you have alternative means to live without power, without a phone. Because I would think about that right now with everything that's going on, especially with everything that's going on. And this is an election year. In election years, strange stuff can happen. We've had stuff going crazy even before it was an election year. So just think about what's going to continue to happen this year. And we can guess a lot. And you should plan for things that are your best guesses. But if I had to guess, probably ain't seen nothing yet. Stuff could get really, really weird. I really think so. Patrick Fellers with another super chat. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it. He says the purpose of language is to communicate an idea or thought. If you communicated it effectively, then you've used language correctly. Grammar be damned. Yeah, I was just joking around, but no, I mean, good comment. I appreciate it, man. But no, that is kind of funny. If I don't pronounce something exactly perfectly, people just love to kind of get in there, and it's all good. We call them comment generators, right, Patrick? Boom Boom 2A. Thanks for another super chat, man. And a channel member, local supporter. He says, how large do you think the Chinese army is inside the USA? Ooh. Jeez, oh, Pete. No, that's a good thing to think about. 24,314 in 2023 and 22,000 illegal Chinese were apprehended in the first quarter of 2024. Wow. Wow. Whew. Isn't that crazy just to think about? I don't have an answer for you, and I don't think you wanted me to give you a number, but yeah. What a thought exercise. And I wonder, what do you think, Boom Boom? Do you think it's a coincidence that right as all of this is happening, right? All of this, that they're coming after our guns in so many places in the U.S. like they never have before. Pretty crazy, right? Rudy Finney just chimed in with a super generous super chat. Thanks, man. I really appreciate it, dude. And a longtime channel member. And I hope you're doing good, man. You live in the state of Michigan. I don't even want to say the great state of Michigan, but there's lots of really good people who live here. I promise you that. Lots of good people. But man, oh man. I'm not going to give you guys any advice on what you should do or not do whatsoever. But man, could you imagine people having to drive across the county to get an appointment to be able to apply for a permit to buy a gun, to then have to go to the gun shop and apply for permission yet again on another federal form? Wow. Yeah. Just overnight in Michigan. And I still hear a lot of people, man, a lot of gun owners are saying, dude, it ain't a big deal. Like, what's the big deal? Except for, dude, when a right's delayed, a right is denied. When seconds matter, police are usually only minutes away. That's if they're not hacked. That's if they've not been given other assignments. That's if their radios work. Maybe they don't work. Maybe their squad cars will run. Maybe they won't. So your best case scenario, when seconds matter, police are only minutes away, or weeks or months, or never in some cases. The Butler County Sheriff said, we ain't going to be able to come in and protect you if some of this stuff happens that we're worried about. Just think about that. So somebody realizes, I need a gun, and then they have to go set up an appointment, and they're only open on Tuesdays, or they're only open on Thursdays, and what if they book their appointments? Then what's going to happen? Do you have to set up an appointment for the first series of background checks to then get to go to a gun shop and do your next series of background checks? Like, this is insane. Background checks, period, are unconstitutional. The Form 4473 is unconstitutional. Having an FFL license that has to be purchased and obtained and scrutinized is unconstitutional. But they keep going. And they keep going. And they keep going. Rob Morris says, we almost elected Stacey Abrams in 2020. I know, in Georgia. That's why I said, guys, you know, I know a lot of you don't live in Michigan and a lot of you do, but this is all over the country right now. If you look at Georgia, for example, it's in the deep south. Lots of good people live there. I know a lot of people from Georgia, and I've traveled there many times. Parts of Georgia I've traveled to, you couldn't even imagine a Democrat, even one Democrat getting elected at all, but clearly there's tons of the other side in Georgia. Georgia has 2 Democrat United States senators, equally to Michigan having 2, and California, and New York. That's crazy, isn't it? Of course, you can have states like Kentucky where Mitch McConnell votes for massive gun control, and states like South Carolina with Lindsey Graham, and he ain't safe nowhere now. Are any of you guys familiar with the northeastern part of Georgia, we'll call it? Like the Georgia-South Carolina line. Anybody from around there or traveled there? You spend time in that part of Georgia, you could drive around for hours, and you'd become convinced that there can't be one Democrat in the whole state of Georgia at this point. And then you look at Georgia has literally sent 2 Democrats equally to Washington, D.C. as California has. And look at my home state of Michigan. 2 Democrat senators sent to Washington, D.C. Georgia, Michigan, and California are all contributing equally to this terrible agenda when it comes to the Senate passing bills. That's a tough pill to swallow, isn't it? Now, there's the kicker. If senators were elected by state legislatures, like how this country was founded on, that's why in so many ways we literally don't live in the United States of America anymore, because this is not how this country was supposed to be run. And when you have a great experiment on self-governance and you do differently than the founding fathers set it up, you're going to end up with different results than how they so eloquently set it up, right? If you had the state legislators, we would have a majority, basically super majority of Republicans in the United States Senate right now. Now, would that wash all your fears away? No, of course not, because Republicans in the Senate came over with the Democrats and have voted for so many things, including the so-called Safer Communities Act, which has led to a lot of things that we're now facing. So I'm not saying that's the quick answer. That's not the end-all, be-all when it comes to Washington, D.C., obviously, but if senators were still elected by state legislatures, we would not have the Democrat majority in the United States Senate that we have now. Yeah. It's a tyranny of the majority. You have a couple big cities in Michigan, like Northern Ferry Customization said, and you're correct. Yeah, a couple cities in Michigan. But here's the problem. So many people live there compared to the rural areas. Do you know how many dead people live there? I mean, look at the freest and fairest elections of all time. It's not just the people that live there, it's the dead people that vote there. You know the old saying, right? He was a conservative and vote Republican his whole life until the day he died. Now he's voting Democrat continually, constantly. They literally had that saying and people just laughed at it. They literally laughed at it. I can remember this. This was years ago now. They used to have this saying. The Democrats would say, vote early and vote often. And I would just kind of chuckle and said, haha, ain't that cute? Yeah, it was cute when all them college kids indoctrinated by the Jimmy Carter Education Industrial Complex of 1979. Look it up. It's called the Educational Industrial Complex of 1979, otherwise known as the founding of the United States Department of Education. One of the biggest downfalls of this country, actually. The government indoctrinating your children? Just think about that for a minute. Can you even believe that? Well, that's how it is now, and it has been for 44 years, right? The Department of Education. The Ministry of Truth. We actually had a Ministry of Truth set up in the United States. I think it's laying fallow right now. But it's still technically there. It's still there. Actually, it's right here. Right? The Ministry of Truth is with you always. But no, think about that. These are in all 50 states. Georgia, Michigan, Tennessee, Kentucky, Oregon, Washington. Doesn't matter. They all have to follow that same script, but I watched all these college kids rush the Capitol. They literally came in. They came in from buses. They came in from wherever. Like I was looking for parachutes. They came in from weather balloons. Who knows where? They rushed through and they said, boom, we want gun control. We want it now. What do we want? Gun control. When do we want it? Now. That's how they chant. They literally get out there. What do we want? When do we want it? And they chanted and they came in. And yep. Well, people were just laughing, right? Well, a lot of conservatives, were sitting there saying, ha, 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 that's funny. Vote early and vote often. No, this is real, though. And it would be funny, except for it's too sad to be funny. And in the most fortified elections of all time, and that's from Time Magazine, a NewsGuard certified source, YouTube. Look, they said Joe Biden was the most popular and the most fortified of all time. The Michigan elections were the most fortified of all time. Employed the greatest dominions that they could over the people of Michigan, the Great Dominion, many, many things. There's many reasons why. But somehow, the Michigan House and Senate got taken over by 2 seats and just bam, instantly. Just shoving all this craziness down our throats. That has to do with the Second Amendment and so many things. So there you guys go. If we were Democrats, we'd say vote early and vote often, but I don't do that, and I don't recommend that you do that. But yeah, all of these states, lots of dead people in these big cities too. Don't forget about that. Lots of dead people that vote, and they end up usually having generally the same ideology in the end, it seems like, in many cases. I don't know. All right, well, I will see you guys over on Locals tomorrow, and maybe I'll have something on YouTube in the meantime. If not, I look forward to seeing you guys next Friday night. And I appreciate you guys being here, and I hope this stream got you to think a lot about the Second Amendment, and hopefully it got you to think about a lot of things, because there's a lot to think about. But I appreciate getting to spend the time with all of you. All right, thanks for watching, and have a good one.